Okay, what you saying, people, and welcome back to another weekly Forex analysis. Now, before we get into this video, make sure you follow me on my Telegram channel. I'll leave a link to that in the description. So I'll be posting a lot of different trading setups throughout the week, and you don't be missing out on that. And whilst you're at it, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also leave a like. That's all appreciated. But like I said, we've got another weekly Forex analysis. So let me stop talking and let's get into it. Up first, as always, Euro USD. Okay, so for Euro USD on the daily chart, you can see we had a push to the downside this week. You can see from this area of the market here, which I was highlighting during my last weekly analysis last week, saying this is an area of resistance where we can see price push to the downside. You can see resistance all along here. I've got multiple wicks along there, two false breakouts as price closed above but then closed back below. But essentially this area of the market was resistance, and I was saying we could potentially be seeing a move to the downside from that area, and you can see we did have a nice push to the downside. We're not quite at this area of support here. As you can see, this was the previous swing low that price gave us. Push to the upside, we had a push back down, found support here, and from there is where we came back to test that previous resistance. So I could probably expect EURUSD to continue a little bit further next week to go and potentially hit this support area. Then we could either see a push to the upside again, or if we do break this area, then now it will become resistance, and we could probably expect price to go a lot further. As I've been saying for quite a while now, we do have potential targets for the daily chart to potentially go and test previous resistance in the market, now turn support. As you can see, got resistance here, price pushed the upside, went back down again, so resistance on the daily chart. Price could be looking to find that as support if you do get past this support here on the daily chart. And of course, you do have the 200 moving average just below, where we could probably see price go and try and test before potentially continuing on this overall uptrend that we do have in the market. But for now, we are expecting a deeper pullback for USD and potentially go and break through this area and go see if we can go and test the lows all the way down there. So for next week, that's what we're probably looking for, just the selling off to continue. And again, we could be seeing pullbacks in the market. Potentially you got previous support along here where you could potentially see price pull back into, which you can be looking for some selling opportunities to continue that move to the downside. But then again, if you don't break through there, we could be seeing another move back to the upside for USD as price finds support and potentially go and test the highs up here again. So be looking out for both opportunities, but we're definitely expecting price to continue. Next, we're going to take a look at USD JPY. Okay, so next we got USD JPY on the daily chart. As you can see here, we had a push to the downside over the past few days now, and now we're coming up to very strong area of support in the market, some support on the daily time frame. As you can see, if I highlight this area, you can see previous support here, push to the upside, again support there, push to the upside, and again acting as support. So we're expecting another push to the upside for USD JPY. We do have this trend line running through the market, not too far away. As you can see, had a previous test of the market here, push to downside, get a second time push the downside, and a third time push the downside. So potentially could be seeing price from this area of support go and test that trend line again for a fourth time. Then either two things can happen. We can see price reject again and give us another move back down, or see price break through this trend line and see a bigger move to the upside, where we could probably be targeting the 200 moving average there, or some recent highs made all the way up there. So we've got some longer targets for USD/JPY, but for now we are at support, and we do have a little bit of bullish price action come into the market there, as you can see here. So we are expecting a move to the upside for USD/JPY from a daily perspective and from the lower time frames as well, and probably will be targeting first the trend line running through the market there, unless we turn bearish next week and we see price come back in for another test this level and go and break it, and we could be seeing price continue a lot further to the downside, because now this will be turned resistance. So we could probably see price retest or continue further, but for now our bias is probably to the upside for USD/JPY, and to get a move from this area in the market here to go and test the trend line again or go further. So if you do pull back into the support and you see some nice opportunities to go long, that could be a nice place to do so, and anticipate a move to go and test the trend line up there. Okay, let's see what's happening with USD CAD. Okay, so for USD CAD on the daily chart, you can see I had a nice push to the upside this week. Well, with one big candle there, big push to the upside with that day. I think that was Wednesday. So a big push to the upside this week, and we were expecting a push to the upside for USD CAD. You can see on my last weekly analysis, I was saying that we're expecting a push to the upside for this one from the daily chart. We're only looking for buys this week, and you can see we did have a nice push to the upside. It turns out price did find some nice support in this area, and that area held, and we had a nice push to the upside. Because we were saying potentially price could potentially break and go and test the lows down here. As you can see, we could move a little bit lower, but essentially price found support there and had a nice push to the upside. So again, for USD CAD, we're expecting price to continue. However, we do have some resistance that could potentially see price reverse before that move continues. As you can see, I've just drawn the trend line in the market here, connecting the previous high there and this high made there. You can see we kind of had a doji, or a couple of dojis on Thursday and Friday at this same trend line. So again, a bit of an indecision at the market at that trend line. So we could potentially see price maybe move lower again before we see price go and break it first. In that case, that could be a nice place to look for some buying opportunities. Again, you've got previous support there, so if price was to make its way all the way back there, it could be a nice place to look for some longs. And of course, we do have some previous resistance along here as well, so if price was to come here, you could look for longs there, anticipate a break of this trend line, because we are still favoring a longer move to the upside to go and at least test the resistance that we have going for the market here. As you can see, resistance here, push the downside, and of course you've got the 200 moving average not too far up there as well. So if you use the CAD, only looking for buys as well, but could be seeing a move to the downside first before that happens. Now let's take a look at Euro GBP. Okay, so for Euro GBP on the daily chart, you can see we're still moving in this corrective pattern here. We did see a big push to the downside towards the end of last week, as you can see with that bearish candle there, sort of actually breaking through the lows that we have in the market here. So again, that could be a sign that price wants to continue moving lower. I wouldn't say we've broken out of this sideways moving pattern just yet with that candle. We need a bit more of a convincing break. As you can see, if I just still draw the trend lines in, we're kind of still in price there with multiple touches on either trend line. So again, we're still kind of in this sideways movement, very corrective price action here. Could potentially see price move lower to go and test the low trend line here, to potentially see another push to the upside. But for now, we're still moving in that corrective pattern, so expecting price to continue there. We do have a trend line going through the market. As I was highlighting last week, we do have a channel. If I connect the lows and the highs of price, as you can see for Euro GBP, if I connect the previous highs and the previous lows, so you can see a low here connected with that low gives us this trend line in the market. So potentially could be seeing price come to test this trend line and then potentially giving us a move to the upside, where we could target the higher trend line. As you can see, a test there, second test there, could be seeing a third test up here. But if we do break through this trend line, we could see price go a lot further and potentially go and test the lows previously made by price here, where we had that big push to the upside. We could see price get attracted there again if we do break through this trend line. However, for now, we're probably expecting that's where price wants to go. We'll see how price action is there, and potentially could be looking for buys for Euro GBP for next week if we do get a nice test of that area. But if we do get a breakthrough, that could potentially see price continue a little bit further to go and test this support down there. Okay, up next we've got AUD USD. Okay, so for AUD USD on the daily chart, you can see we're slowly making our way to the downside there. You can see we're making lower lows and there's lower highs in the market. However, we have been failing to make a lower low on the daily chart for some time now. As you can see, support here, support there, and support there again, and price is struggling to break through this level here. So potentially could be seeing another push to the upside early next week, and price may find some resistance in order to finally go and break through that support, or maybe the US elections give us the volatility to go and break through the support next week. But our bias is still to the downside from this one from a daily perspective. We do have targets at the 200 moving average just below down there, and again we do have support going through the market there as well. As you can see, price found support here and essentially gave us a move to the upside from that same support. So potentially could be seeing price come to test this area if we do go and break through this support running through the market there. We do have a trend line going through the market as well for AUD/USD. As you can see, test there, push the downside, second there, push the downside, third, another test, and a fourth there, another test. So potentially could be seeing price making one last push to the upside, go test that trend line again, and then you could be looking for some shorts if you do get some nice bearish price action down the lower time frames, look to take advantage of a push to the downside and go and break through that support. So again, only looking for sales for AUD/USD, but potentially could be seeing a brief push to the upside to go and test that trend line, which you could be looking to take advantage of on the lower time frames, but still expecting a move to the downside for this pair and potentially go and test the area here, unless we go and just have a big push to the upside and take out some highs and take up this trend line. Then we could potentially see a longer push to the upside, but for now bias is still to the downside for this pair. Now let's take a look at NZD CAD. Okay, so for NZD CAD on the daily chart, you can see that price is kind of just squeezing between two trend lines. We've got this daily trend line here going through the market. If we connect the previous lows, so as you can see, initially a test there, initially a test there, a second there, you can see a third there, fourth. I'm treating this as a false breakout, and you see price is still moving to the upside from this trend line. And then we do have this trend line in a downwards trend, as you can see if we connect the two highs. So initially test there and a second there, and we almost had a third there. So kind of just trapped between these two trend lines. You can either see price break to the upside or to the downside. If it breaks to the upside, again, we've got previous highs here. We can potentially see price go and test. Maybe get a double top, as you can see a test there, second there, and then see price push to the downside. Or potentially see price break to the downside here, break through this daily trend line, and start and give us a new trend to the downside, where you could potentially see price go and take out some lows. As you can see, support here, support there, and if we break through there, we can be targeting a lot further. As you can see, you've got previous resistance just underneath it, where we potentially see price find some support, and of course you've got the lows down there. So a lot of targets where we can see potential price head to if you do break through the daily trend line going through here. But if we break to the upside, you can see a nice push to the upside, and price coming up to that previous resistance, where we can look for some shorts and anticipate a longer push to downside for this one. So for this one, early next week, opportunities are probably if we get another move to the upside to go and test that trend line there, potentially look for some shorts, or on the flip side, if we get a move to this trend line again, you can potentially look for some longs, and again, probably just want to be targeting the eye of a trend line on each side until we see price properly break out of this, out of these trend lines, and see a longer move to the upside or to the downside. Next, we're going to take a look at GBP NZD. Okay, so for GBP NZD on the daily chart, clearly see we've got some support down there. As you can see, previous support here, second time and the third time. Every time we've got a push to the upside from. So again, a strong area on the daily chart where price gets attracted to it, and it does seem to reverse that. So you could potentially be seeing another push to downside to go and test that area for a fourth time. As you can see, every time price is pushed to the upside, we're making those lower highs. So price is obviously struggling to continue in an uptrend. You could be seeing prices roll over and then go and test this area again for a fourth time. We do have a little bit of a trend line to the downside. As you can see, if we connect the previous highs, initial test there, second there, and a third there. So you can potentially see price maybe finding some strength, going to the upside, potentially go and test that trend line again for a fourth time, or the 200 moving average just above it on the daily, and see price give us another move to the downside. And we could potentially look for some shorts, or if you see price maybe go and test some previous resistance going through the market. As you can see, resistance here, nice push downside. If we're going to test it again for maybe a double top and see price give us another move to the downside. So for GBP/NZD for next week, probably only looking for shorts for this one, but I'll probably prefer if price gave us one last push to the upside first before we did that, to get a nice a little bit better entry, go test the previous resistance or even the trend line. That would be even better, and then give us a nice move to the downside. So only looking for shorts for this one next week, but if we do break through this resistance and this trend line, we potentially see a longer move to the upside, but for me the move to the downside is a little bit more likely for this pair. Up next is CAD JPY. Okay, so with CAD JPY on the daily chart, you can see we had a nice push to the downside this week. Very strong move again on Wednesday, that big bearish candle to the downside there. I was talking about this upwards trend line that we had going through the market here, and as you can see, price tested it multiple times with these wicks, and we slowly had a little bit of an uptrend in the market to the upside. But I was saying if price does break through this trend line, we're probably going to see a longer push to the downside to go and test these lows. And you can actually see we've gone to test them. Got a couple of wicks to the downside. Price tried to break through it on the daily chart. Looks like this area in the market could be holding for it a little bit. Probably still expecting price to continue a little bit further. We do have a little bit of a trend line going for the market here, and just above us there as well. So potentially could be seeing price go a little bit further to the downside for CAD JPY to give us another test of this trend line. As you can see, initially test there, second there, could be looking at a third there, maybe another move back to the upside, where we can see a third test of the high trend line. As you can see, a test there, a second there, which gave us the move to the downside. So could be seeing another move back up to go and test that higher trend line again. And you can see ultimately on the daily chart, we are looking very bearish from the double top that we had up here. Price has given us a very strong move to the downside. So unless we start to see some strong bullish candles coming back in the market, probably expecting that to continue. And if you do come into this area here, again, that's a nice place to look for some longs, and then you could probably see a longer push to the upside for CAD JPY, potentially go and test the highs up here for that trend line. On the weekly chart as well, you can see it's actually a very strong area in the market, acting at both support and resistance. As you can see here, the level I just highlighted, acting in resistance all along here of these wicks on the weekly chart, and again support all along here on the weekly chart as well. So a very strong area in the market where we potentially could see price reverse and give us another push to the upside, unless we don't go and break it, of course, and then continue to the downside where we can see a longer move, potentially go and test the lows all the way down there. But our bias is still to the downside unless we go and break that area. So again, probably be looking for longs for next week for CAD JPY. Potentially could see price move a little bit lower first before we get that big push to the upside. Up next is GBP USD. Okay, so for GBP USD on the daily chart, you can see we do have this uptrend in the market still happening. We haven't broken this trend line as of yet. Last week I was saying that we're going to get a move to the downside to go and potentially test this trend line again. As you can see, we did get a move to the downside, but price hasn't actually tested the trend line yet. But we're still probably expecting price to continue with this bearishness and probably go and test the trend line down there. Of course, we don't have much to go, but we're probably expecting price to continue a little bit further, then potentially either hold at that trend line and give us another move to the upside, or break through it and give us a move to the downside, where potentially could be seeing price go and test some previous support in the market. As you can see, support here, push the upside, so again we'll be acting as support again if you do break through that trend line. So that's where we're expecting price to go. And of course we've got the 200 moving average running through it as well, which price could go and test again. So for GBP/USD, our bias is probably to the downside again. As you can see, we're having a tough time moving in the upwards direction unless we get some strong impulsive candles closing to the upside, breaking through new highs again. Then maybe I might change my bias. My bias is still to the downside for GBP/USD, and probably go and break this trend line and continue further. However, if we do hold that trend line, obviously you can still easily get another move to the upside, and again you can probably look to take advantage of that in the lower time frames and possibly go and target previous highs made from here and see another move to go and test that same area again. And if that happens, I'll probably be looking for shorts again for another move to go test the trend line and probably go and break it this time. But for now, expecting GBP/USD to continue on a little bit more, and then potentially could be seeing a move to the upside from that area, or potentially a move lower to go and test the lows here. We just have to see what type of price action we get when price gets there, and then take advantage of which direction GBP/USD wants to go. And last we have GBP CAD. Okay, so for GBP CAD on the daily chart, not too much happened this week in terms of direction of price. We had a brief move to the upside. Last week price finished there, and as you can see, we had a push to the upside to go and test the resistance again in the market. Maybe a bit of a false breakout, but essentially we're still holding that as resistance and probably still anticipating another move down for GBP CAD to go and potentially go and test the lows down there, or all the way down here if we can get a bigger move for GBP CAD. As you can see, previous support here, push the upside, again support, push the upside, again support, push the upside. So it could be seeing price making its way back to go and test that lows. But again, it does have a lot of areas where potentially price might struggle and potentially reverse before it gets there. So that's more of a long-term target. But for GBP CAD, we are at some resistance, and naturally do expect a move to the downside. If I connect some previous highs in the market there, as you can see, initially test there, push the downside, again a second, push the downside, now had a third. So potentially that could give us the bearishness we need to go and break to the downside, go break through this 200 moving average running through the market there, and go and break through some lows as well, and potentially go and test that support down there. However, if we do go break through this resistance and break through the trend line, again, we could see a bigger push to the upside. Again, you've got previous resistance there, you can see price come to, or again, all the way up there, which was the previous high we made before we got this move to the downside. So again, keep your eyes out for both possible situations. If we do hold at this trend line at that resistance, again, we could see a nice move to the downside and go. And again, you've got a few targets you could be looking at. But if price does remain bullish and break through this resistance and that trend line, again, you can look for some support to get into the market and look to carry on that further. And again, you've got some areas in the market you could be targeting. But for now, we are moving quite correctively. So naturally, do expect price to give us a move to the downside. But against the markets, anything could happen. If we do remain bullish, could easily break through this area and continue to the upside. But for now, unless we break through that, as long as we stay underneath this trend line and that resistance, still going to be anticipating a move to the downside for GBP CAD. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the video. So I hope you all enjoyed it, and if you did, make sure you give a thumbs up. That's all appreciated. If you disagree or you agree with me, drop a comment and I'll make sure I'll get back to you. But until the next one, I'll see you later.